Hello all you NBA fans out there. This is Tom Banks, the Data Dude again. This is my second video with the Sacramento Kings. I left off the last video talking about system proficiency, and I made a change to the team. I changed the system proficiency to 7 seconds because that would be the best choice for this team. But I thought about it after the last video, and I said to myself, well, aren't we trying to lose? Don't we want to get a high pick? So I'm going to change it back to post-centric. That is actually worse for the team, but better for me overall. Now, one thing I wanted to show you guys that I probably didn't cover too well in the last video is that when you choose these different system proficiencies, it has an effect on your players overall. So let's go back to triangle for a minute. We'll just pick that one. Now, if I go and look at my roster, I can see that right now my overalls are 81, 80, 79, 78. Randolph, Heald, Cauley-Stein, and Fox, right? So now we'll go back to system proficiency and we'll set it to post-centric. Sometimes it has an effect and sometimes it doesn't, but notice now it's 81, 80, 79, 78. So there has been a change in the overalls for those players, and that's because of the fact that depending on the proficiency and how proficient the players are in those different systems, they might get a little boost or they actually might take a hit, which has happened before. It doesn't look like any of my players took a hit this time. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're choosing your different system proficiencies. One thing that really bugs me about the game, though, is that you can't see what the coach's proficiencies are before you pick them, before you sign them. All you can do is choose a proficiency that's best for your team, and then when you go to sign a coach, ask him if his style, his play style, is the same as your team's play style. So you probably won't see that for a while with this team. We got Dave Jorger this year, and we're not going to get rid of him. All right, so that's all I have to say about system proficiency. The next thing I wanted to look at was we want to look at who on our team do we consider untouchable and who do we consider trade bait, players that we might be able to get somebody good for. The only really untouchable player I would say we have on this team is De'Aaron Fox. And why would I make that decision? Well, because as you can see, I've sorted by age, and my two youngest guys are Fox and Giles. Why would De'Aaron be an untouchable player? Well, let's go ahead and take a look at his overall potential. So we're going to go to the attributes. And you notice right now his overall is 77. He's getting a little boost. He's a 78. We're going to go down to the very, very bottom and we're going to look at his potential number. And notice that it's a 91. He has a very high potential. He's only 19 years old. He's a rookie. He's got lots of room to grow. And that's really, really good. So we want to keep this guy around. So we're going to go ahead and make him untouchable. So we added him to the untouchables. No other player on this team would I consider untouchable. Possibly Giles. His overall is 70. His cap is 81. We might hold on to him. We might not. We'll see what we can get for him. But I think we're going to hold on to De'Aaron. As far as trade bait, are there any players on this team we would get rid of if we maybe want to float somebody out there and say this is a guy that we don't really need? So I'm going to look at the different positions that we have. We have point guards, we have 3 shooting guards, we have a bunch of small forwards, we have a couple of power forwards, and we have a center. None of these guys are really good trade bait. Possibly Vince Carter, maybe Justin Jackson here, although he's 22, so we might want to hold on to him. Caboclo is a 68 overall, with a potential of only 79, which is still not too bad. He could turn into something good if we spend a little time on him. So there isn't really anyone on the team that I want to throw out there as trade bait. I'll just let the offers come in and we'll see how that would work for us. Alright. So another thing I wanted to look at, when we're talking about trades, everyone knows how to use the trade finder, but one thing I forgot to look at last video, if we're talking about doing a rebuild, we definitely want to see what picks we have. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to check out my picks. And we've got our first for 2018 and we've got 3 seconds. 1 for 2018 and then 2 for 2019. We don't have a first in 2019. That's not good, but you know, we'll just have to roll with it. But this year we definitely have our first. So if we do tank, we'll for sure have a high pick. All right. Another thing I want to talk about is I've noticed that some teams, some people, when they play this game, they tend to do things on the on your coaching screen when you set your game plan. You come in here and they'll say, oh, I don't want Labissiere at power forward. I want to start Kufus. Or they'll say, that's weird. Oh, anyway, they'll say, I don't want De'Aaron Fox at point guard. I want Garrett Temple. And they put them in there, but they leave them as their same starting position. Well, the game actually doesn't do a good job of adjusting when you're simulating for the position that the player is assigned to. Notice in the middle of the screen there that Zach Randolph is a power forward / center. He can play both positions, and when they simulate, if they need a center and Zach's available, they will put him in at center. Notice that Buddy Hield is only a shooting guard. All he plays is shooting guard. He'll never play small forward. He'll never play point guard. If you put him in as the starting small forward, the next time the game simulates him in, he will be as the shooting guard. He won't be playing at small forward. That's because the game is going off of whatever position the player is actually supposed to be assigned to. So, let's say, for example, that we decided that we don't want Skal Labissiere playing power forward. We think that perhaps because he's so good at blocks and vertical and layups, that he'd make a pretty good center. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to edit the player. Now, before I do this, let's go back and look at his overall. So his overall is a 76 as a power forward. We're going to come in here to Vitals, and we're going to change him to be a center, and we're going to give his secondary position as power forward rather than his primary position. We'll go ahead and back out of this, and we'll accept those changes. And now, when we go look at our centers, now we see Labissiere is a 75 overall. So not quite as good as a center as he was as a power forward, but that's something that you can keep in mind, is that when you do make that change, now you see he's a two-way center, and that you also know that when you put him in your lineup and you have him coming off the bench, he will primarily sub in as a center, and then if they need him at power forward, they'll sub him in at power forward. All right, so we'll go ahead and change Labissiere back, make him a power forward again, and his secondary position at center. And we'll accept those changes in return. That puts him back in our power forward pool, back as a 76, back as the backup to Zach Randolph. All right. The next thing I wanted to look at real quick before we actually start playing games is going back to look at training. Now that we've looked at who our young guys are and who we probably want to make some training changes to, some of these older guys you really don't have to do a whole lot because they're not going to get much better than what they are now. Some of the younger guys, though, you definitely want to go in and maybe make some adjustments to the way the game automatically assigns their training. So last time we set him up for team training, we set him for tactical offense. This is De'Aaron Fox. And last time we set him for fundamental team. Now notice that, for example, in the physical training, he's got a 45 contact dunk, and he has a standing dunk of 25. They want to train him in standing dunk because that's what the team training specifies for his typical position. Well, we don't need standing dunk on this guy. So we're going to go ahead and make this a custom. And we're going to go down here and we're going to reduce that standing dunk down to like 4 or 3 even. This gives us some points that we can put into something else that will allow him to become better in a different area. Notice he's got a contact dunk of 45, that's fine. Driving dunk of 60, so maybe we want to boost his lateral quickness a little bit, and we'll boost his driving dunk a little bit. Get that up there, and we have one more point to spend, and we'll just put that in speed with the ball. Alright, so we made some custom adjustments to his training because we want him to get better in areas that we think he's actually going to show good improvement, and also because we want him to kind of take away some of those things that aren't really necessary for his position, like standing dunk, standing layup. So that's a change that you should focus on when you look at your younger guys. Now the older guys, like I said, you don't really have to do a whole lot with them. You can leave it on team. You can leave the tactical set the way it is. The other thing I like to do is I like to come in here, and as I said last time, and change the overall workload for our guys in the G League to very high so that they get better training. All right, so we'll pop out of training. And we'll come back here to game plan. Game planning. So before we play our first game, we're going to come in here and we're going to look at our coach game plan. So notice that there is an all teams coach game plan, and then there's one specific to each team. Now most of the time you are going to start here at your all teams, right? This is where we decide who our starters are going to be, what changes we want to make, what's going on. Now normally I let the CPU rebuild the rotation and put the players in the different spots that I want them in. And that usually works pretty good because they pick players that are playing the positions that are assigned, and they pick the best players and put them in there. As the season goes through, guys will get tired, guys will be on fire, guys will be ice cold, and they will actually move them out of the lineup if you allow the computer to decide. So I always come in here and make these changes before every game because I want to make sure that my guys are getting the minutes they need. Now keep in mind that the minutes in the rotation are decided by the bench depth that your coach has right here. Now notice that the bench depth is 9. That means that only 9 of the players are going to play, your 5 starters and 4 guys off the bench. That means that anybody below that line isn't going to get a chance to even do anything in the game. At the very bottom here, your 2 reserves, they will never be available for any games unless you move them out of the reserve. That's normally where you put your injured players. But I don't like the fact that only 9 players are going to play because that's going to make all of our starters very, very tired. So we're going to go ahead and because we're looking to tank this year, I'm actually going to let everybody play. We're going to take those all the way to 13. Now another thing I don't like here is help defense. Help defense means that your guys are going to help out others on defense. That can be good for a team that's fast. That can be good for a team that can get back to their man quickly, but not quite so good for a team that isn't that great. So I'm going to go ahead and lower this down to about, we'll do 25. So they're not going to help a whole lot. Run plays frequency is how often they use the plays that are in your playbook. Apparently Jorger really wants them to only run the plays that he tells them to run. But I want to allow a little bit of improvisation, so I'm going to drop that to 85. Zone usage, I never use zones. Jorger hardly ever uses zones either, apparently. You don't really, in the modern NBA, very few teams actually use a zone ever, so I'm just going to drop that to 0. Bench utilization, we want the 50-50, that's fine. In an average game, that's about how much time they'll get to play. If you want to use the bench a little less, you drop that down. If you want to use them a little more, you increase it. And lineup performance factor is the idea that if a player is doing well, the coach will leave him in for a few extra minutes. If he's not doing so good, the coach will sit him down and put someone else in. So we'll go ahead and jack that up to 75. So the coach will be really watching the guys playing and he'll decide on his own whether or not those players get to stay in the game. Sim points of emphasis, we have our scoring options here. The first scoring option is going to be Zach Randolph because we're playing a low post style of basketball here. Very post-centric, we want him to be he's our superstar, so we're going to feed him. Our offensive focus will be neutral for now, or we can feed the post. We'll go ahead and feed the post. Offensive tempo is average, or we can make it patient. Really the difference with these different tempos is that the higher the tempo, the more likely you turn the ball over, but the higher the tempo, the more possessions you get and the more shots you get to take. Next is offensive rebounding. We got this one we're not going to change. Defensive focus we're not going to change because it's dependent on the team we're playing. And defensive aggression, you can play physical, you can be conservative, or you can just be neutral. We'll leave it at neutral. And finally, defensive rebounding, we'll leave that one alone as well. So, back to my lineups now. Because I changed how many players get to play, I'm going to go ahead and rebuild the rotation again. And now all of our starters only play 25 minutes. Our 6th man comes in for 24 minutes. 20 minutes for Bissiere, 17 for Temple, 15 for Vince, 12 for Shumpert, 11 for Jackson. Mason will get 9, Giles will take 7, and the reserves do not play. So now everybody gets to play. Alright, so we'll go ahead and back out of there. Now that's all teams. Now we can, as you notice at the bottom, we can delete this game plan. Well, you can't delete this one, but you can delete the other game plans, and you can also copy the game plan to a different team that you're going to play against. Now I usually change this right before I start a game, and so I will do that as soon as I find out who our first opponent is. Alright, so we'll go ahead and go back to the calendar, and our first opponent is the Rockets. Alright. Notice that in my Untouchables list I have De'Aaron Fox. In my trade block I don't have anyone because I'm not looking to trade anyone, and I don't have a target list because I'm not really looking to make the team better. I'm just trying to get that high draft pick. There's our playoff picture. You can see that nobody's played any games yet. We'll go ahead and start simming. Alright. First game is going to be against the Rockets. So we'll go ahead and go into our coaching, go into our coach game plan, and we'll go ahead and find the Rockets. Alright, so now you can see that it's this specific game plan is for this specific team. If you're ever unclear as to whether or not you're doing the all or if you're doing a specific team, you can see up in the left hand corner you have the Kings and you have the Rockets, and it would be the specific team that you're doing your lineups for. For all, that the place where the Rockets is would be blank. Alright, so for this one, we're not going to change anything in our rotation. We're not going to, on defensive settings, the computer always defaults these two double teams to manual all. I like to set them to auto all, that way the computer can decide whether or not it wants to double team, and that allows the simulation to make some smarter decisions. You can change who guards whom in your matchups right here on this screen. You have Chris Paul, James Harden, Trevor Ariza, Tucker, Capella, and Gordon. So you can go in here and you can say, well, I don't want Chris Paul guarded by De'Aaron Fox. I want my shooting guard to cover him, and you can choose him from the list. I hardly ever change this unless I need to. One thing to keep in mind is that you do have players that are better defenders than others. And so if you have a mismatch like this where maybe you have a shooting guard who's not as good a defender as your point guard, then you want to go ahead and auto select James Harden, for example, to be guarded by your point guard. I'm not going to make any changes right now because I haven't even looked at how good our defense is to begin with. I'm not going to make any changes to the coaching. Now notice at the top here, for this specific team we have scout advice. The scout is telling us that for offensive focus we should do a neutral offensive focus. We should spread the ball out. We should not focus so much into the paint, into the post. I don't care about that. I want to feed the post. That's what we're going to do. For defensive focus, the game is telling us to limit perimeter shots. Our scout says limit perimeter shots for your defensive focus. That sounds like a good idea on defense, so we'll go ahead and do that. It doesn't want me to change anything else, so I won't change anything else. And we are ready to face up against the Rockets. Alright, here's game 1 of the season. We're going to go ahead and simulate that game. And we lose 103 to 125. Another thing I like to do for every one of my games is it takes me a little while to get through the season, but I like to go through and see how we did. Who scored? How many points did they score? So Zach Randolph had 16, 14 for Kufis, who fouled out, 12 for De'Aaron Fox, 12 for Labissiere, 10 for Buddy Hield, 9 for VC, 8 for Shumpert, 7 for Bogdanovich, 5 for Mason, 4 for Cauley Stein, who had 6 rebounds and 4 assists, 3 for Temple, 3 for Justin Jackson, and 7 minutes for Giles, and he got 1 assist and missed 2 shots. He had 3 fouls though. On the other side, 22 for Gordon, 18 for Ariza, 17 for Chris Paul, 16 for Gerald Green, 13 for Harden, 10 for Capella, and 10 for Mbaba Bube. And no foul outs on that side, and they pretty much crushed us overall, which I didn't expect to do well against Houston, and the game proved that to us. Kind of go through the stats a little bit here to see how we did overall. I kind of think we didn't do too well, and we had 34 was our biggest lead. So that was our first loss of the season. Hopefully many more to come. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to the next game. Sim through that day. Now we're going to play the Mavericks. So let's go ahead and go in here and change it up a little bit for the Mavericks. So we're not going to do any minutes adjustments. Everyone will just stay exactly the same. So we're just going to go down to this screen here, and it says to set neutral offensive focus. We're not changing that. Go ahead and protect the paint on defense and run in transition for defensive rebounding. So we'll set those things. And we'll back out of here. We're going to go play the Mavericks. So we'll send through that date. And now we're being offered a trade. They want to trade us Rodney Hood and J.R. Smith for Buddy Hield and Iman Shumpert. Notice that we can decline, we can negotiate, or we can stop and review, and that's a new thing that they added in 2K18 this year. Negotiate will take us immediately to the negotiation screen. Decline will just decline this trade completely. One thing that I like to look at when it comes to trades is position. If they're trying to trade me, say, 2 centers for a power forward and a small forward, I'm not going to take it because I don't need 2 centers. I try to keep the same number of position players that I have in the trades. The only exception is if they offer me a position player and, say, a pick. For example, I'm probably not going to turn down a really good pick. So in this instance, they want to give me a 78 and a 75 for an 80 and a 72. I'm going to go ahead and stop the simulation and review. We'll back out of here. And when you do that, you come to the front office and you can see review pending trade here at the bottom. So we'll go ahead and look at this pending trade. Now, Buddy Hield is a 23-year-old, 6'4", 80 overall. He has a potential of 84, so he's pretty close to his potential already. Iman Shumpert is an old guy. He's 27. He's been in the league for a while, and he's probably not going to get much better, even though his potential is high. He's had so many injuries through his career that he's just not going to do too well. Now, notice that it's a $3 million and a $10 million contract. On the other side, they're giving us Rodney Hood for $2 million and J.R. Smith for $13 million. J.R. Smith is a 2-year contract, and Rodney Hood is a 1-year contract. I don't really want to give up Buddy Hield. I think he's a pretty good small shooting guard to have for our team, so I'm not going to make this trade. So when I back out of this, I have 2 options. I can decline the trade now, or I can exit without declining. I'm just going to go ahead and decline it. And we'll get back to the simulation. And we beat the Mavericks. All right, what's on your mind, Zach? Is everything all right? Zach says, I saw your press conference. I'm just going to put all my chips on the table because I know the writing's on the wall. What that means for Zach. Like, if you don't want me here, come to me and say it. I haven't made any final decisions. I know that's not what you want to hear, but it's the truth. I'm in an evaluation period. I'm looking at everything in the organization from top to bottom, whole organization. I won't keep anything from you. When I make a decision, you'll hear it from me before you hear it anywhere else. I'm sure you give you something more concrete. That's it for right now. I'll be completely honest. I appreciate that. Take care. So he doesn't like the fact that he's not one of the untouchables, even though he is the best player on our team. He is a rather old man, and he's 36 years old, and we've got him for 2 years, so he'll be 38, well, 37 by the time we get rid of him. By the time his contract ends. Right now he's a core player. We're not going to make any promises, guy. All right, so we actually won against the Mavericks, surprisingly. Harrison Barnes dropped 22, 20 from Barea, 15 from Mejri, 13 from Smith, 13 from Seth Curry, 7-7, 5-2. So apparently they're not very good in the defending the low post. Zach dropped 28 on him, 18 from Buddy, 16 from Vince Carter, 11 from Temple, 8 from Bogdanovich, 8 and 10 from Cauley Stein, who had 3 steals. Excellent defense. 8 from Shumpert, 6 from Labissiere, 4 from Fox, 4 from Giles, 2 from Jackson, 1 from Kufis. And Frank gave us 9 minutes, a rebound, and 6 assists. So we win by 10. Good job, guys. All right, next up is the Nuggets. So we'll go ahead and set up our game plan for the Nuggets. All right. Not changing anyone's minutes. We're just going to come in here. They want us to change our focus. We're not going to do that, but we will change our defensive focus. And they don't want us to change the defensive rebounding, so we will leave that the same as well. go ahead and simulate the Nuggets game. And we lose to the Nuggets, 89-102. And Justin Jackson has suffered an injury as a strained right MCL. He'll be out 2 to 4 weeks. You can ask him to play through it. It's up to you. Well, we'll go ahead and adjust our rotation. Now notice that this is the overall game plan because there is no team next to our team in the logo up there. So we got to take Justin Jackson out of the rotation, and we're going to put Caboclo in because they play the same position. Alright, and then we will rebuild our minutes. They got Vince Carter as a starter over Bogdanovich, and that's interesting. That's because he's on fire. Oh, and they moved Nigel Hayes up rather than moving up Caboclo, even though that's not a good choice there, so we'll go ahead and fix that. So that's why I always check, even though the computer rebuilds the roster, I didn't want a power forward when I need a small forward. Alright, we're not going to change anything else here. We'll go ahead and make my changes. Good job. Gains a little trust with the trainer every time you do that. That's how you build your trust up with your staff. Alright, so how did we do in that game? 89-102. 17 for Barton, 16 for Harris, 15 for Jokic, 13 for Millsap, 12 for Fareed, 10 for Murray, 7 for Plumlee, 6 and 10 for Lyles, 4 and 2. Notice that all three of their big men here all had 5 fouls. 17 for De'Aaron, 14 for Temple, 11 for Zach on 3 of 8 shooting, 8 and 11 for Kufis, 7 for Hield, 6 for Labissiere, 6 for Shumpert, 5 for Bogdanovich, 5 for Carter, 4 for Cauley-Stein. Only 4 points for Justin Jackson in his 10 minutes after then he was injured, 2 for Mason, and nothing for Giles. And neither of us shot very well from 3. We shot about the same number of free throws. They just made a few more baskets in the paint. All right, go ahead and advance. And now we're being offered another trade. They want to give us Ellenson and Lure for Zach Randolph and Hayes. So our best player for John Lure and a bench guy at the very end in the reserves for a bench guy at the very end and the reserves. Again, they're doing power forward trades for power forwards straight up, but I don't really think I want to give up my absolute best player for John Lure. So we'll just decline that trade. Go to team status. Zach's been hearing rumors that we're trying to trade him. He doesn't look happy. We'll go ahead and talk to Zach. Notice his overall morale dropped to 47. I don't get it. I'm on the trading block. What's going on? You know what, Zach? We're not going to trade you. And the assistant GM says, what the heck? I was trying to make some trades here. But we need to make Zach happy. So we'll go ahead and add Zach to our untouchables list. Now notice that before when I added De'Aaron Fox, I did it from the roster. You can actually do it from this screen as well. Just go ahead and add that guy to the list and done. Alright, so here's a playoff picture. And right now the Warriors are 3-0, Timberwolves 2-0. So it's early, Go ahead and send through the date. And next we have the Suns. Alright, so let's set our game plan for the Suns. Come in here and we'll set our game plan up. Notice that the CPU has switched the minutes around just a little bit, depending on how well players are doing. Some people get more minutes, some people get less. Go ahead and set this stuff up here. And they want us to change that focus. We're not doing it, but we'll protect the paint. And we will definitely crash and others run. So this should be could be a win here because the Suns are not very good. But let's see how it goes. So, all right. So I leveled up. Very nice. Now notice it says I've reached level 30. As I said, I've been playing a different game for a while here, and I've got +2 offensive and defensive awareness, so I can get another scouting report per cycle. Time will come. Hear me out. Pump them up. I can pick up some boosts there, but I'll just go ahead and take the fill and study room. Kings have been put up for sale. That's not good. Look, I know what the press is saying. We all hear it, but we're definitely not up for sale. All right. Well, do I believe him or not? I believe you. Why would you sell this team? I get it. If you're telling me there's no truth to it, there's no truth to it. I know we can count on you. Glad we're on the same page. And somehow we squeak out a 3-point win over the Suns. 28 from Booker, 17 from Warren, 15 from Knight, 15 from Triss, 13 from Jackson, 12 from Payton, and 12 from Uli. Zach dropped 40 on him in 32 minutes with 11 rebounds and 5 assists. They could not stop him. 15 from Garrett Temple, 14 from Vince, 13 from Buddy Hield, 11 from Labissiere, and 10 from Cauley Stein. This was an overtime game. We scored 10 in overtime. They scored 7. Each team took 90 shots. Shot a lot of threes and shot about the same percentage. We just squeaked out 2 extra free throws on them and made 2 extra baskets overall. So, all right. Well, hopefully you guys like what you've seen so far, and I've helped you learn a lot about the game and what we can do to be better players. If you like this game, just go ahead and leave me a like on Facebook and on YouTube. This has been Tom Banks, the Data Dude, signing off.